It literally only took an hour for all of the leading people in the U.S. Policymakers to just start, or influential economic thinkers, start calling for bailouts. Put this up there on the screen. This was less than an hour after SVB failure. Larry Summers calls for all depositors at Silicon Valley Bank to get bailed out 100%. It's like you can't even make it up. Immediately after, let's go ahead and put this up there.
And he said,
on the screen.
now is not the time for
That's right.
discussions about moral hazard.
Right.
Okay, which is, of
Why not?
course, right. I mean, now, in fact, is the time for a discussion about moral hazard because you've just told banks that their deposits are covered by insurance they didn't pay for.
Yes.
And that their risky behavior is going to be always and forever backstopped by the Fed. So I think this is actually a really critical time for a conversation about moral hazard.
Absolutely. And Mitt Romney, the famous let Detroit go bankrupt, doesn't have the same theory for Silicon Valley. He says Silicon Valley Bank shareholders and executives lose it all as they should. Depositors in good faith, however, should recover, have access to deposits in order to meet their payrolls, pay their suppliers, and to prevent contagion. Again, you can sympathize with that, and I absolutely do, but then you have to have the correct mechanisms in place to make sure that all of us are not going to be paying more of these bank fees and that the government and the taxpayers are not the ones who are actually backstopping the entire financial system when their sound business practice is supposed to be the check on it. And then personally, my favorite, producer Griffin found this one, put this up there on the screen, from Ryan Mao, who works in climate. He says, with the implosion of SVB, the planet could literally be at stake. 1,500 companies in climate tech were venture-backed at the bank. And he goes on to make a case that if we don't bail out the bank, then we're actually going to destroy and hurt the Silicon Valley. We're going to destroy and hurt the planet because those climate tech companies are so vitally important. And then finally, Mark Cuban, go ahead and put this up there. He called on the Fed to actually step in and buy the bank debt to, quote, end the run. So all of these people who have, as you said, skin in the game. By the way, Bill Ackman was also, the billionaire investor, was also immediately calling for, quote, a highly dilutive government bailout of Silicon Valley Bank, all making the case in terms of contagion that's happening across the economy. But, first of all, I'm curious still about whether the contagion actually was real. By many respects, if you think about it this way, there has been all these tech layoffs, right?
Yeah.
It hasn't impacted the jobs number of the economy literally at all.
Yeah.
Like if you think about like the Google layoffs in totality, they don't even equal like a factory in Alabama if one of those were to go out of business. So tech is one of those like high cash producing industries, very important to GDP as a whole. But in terms of workforce, it is not even close in terms of punching it that way.
Treasury indicated that there were several other banks, was their words, that had a similar risk profile. But, we showed you some charts that indicated SVB was actually quite an outlier here. Now, we did have, prior to SVB collapsing, we also had Silvergate, which is a small crypto-focused bank that collapsed. Then you have SVB, then you have this other small-ish crypto-related bank that also collapsed. So you can see it's very concentrated. They should have learned decades ago that having your eggs in one basket industry-wise is a very risky business practice to start with. And then they also, in the case of SVB, really upped the ante in terms of their interest rate risk by putting their assets also in these long-term treasury bonds. But I am skeptical of the case that was being made in, again, very loud and over-the-top terms by a lot of influential people on social media, some of whom we just showed you, like Mark Cuban and others, that there would 100% be a bank run on Monday if we did not act. Because, again, a lot of the commentary ignored the fact that there is a process in place. There is an existing process for dealing with banks when they are insolvent, and it does not lead to depositors losing all of their cash over $250,000. They likely would have taken perhaps about a 10% haircut. So in order to, 100% backstop these depositors, they have effectively deemed every single bank in the country too big to fail, which is a gigantic shift. Well, I don't know if it's a shift in policy, but it's a recognition that that's the reality of our banking system, and that requires a dramatic overhaul of the way we're approaching this. One other thing in terms of like the climate tech piece, which again goes back to the fact, he's acting like, oh, all of these would 100% fail. That is alarmist, and it is just false. In addition, there are few people, few banking clienteles in the world that would be as well positioned to withstand having a cash crunch for a short time period than these individuals, many of them who are backed by wealthy venture capitalists who were some of the same voices who were demanding the bailout over the weekend. Well, if they felt these companies were so promising, so important, et cetera, I didn't see them marshaling their wealthy resources in order to provide bridge loans and backstop the losses and make sure that these employees weren't hurt. Seemed to be a lot fewer libertarians in Silicon Valley than there were just maybe 2 weeks ago. So they weren't, bootstrapping and coming together to make sure that this industry and their companies that they've invested in make it through this time. Instead, they just started screaming and demanding that the government, which again, they're saying no taxpayer dollars, but I think we've explained the way that ultimately we're all on the hook for this, but demanding that the government come to their rescue in this instance.
Yes.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us. And if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.